Hello, fellow plant enthusiasts. So I'm going to show you guys how to make a slip over the branch air layering device. And you see these air layering devices you can purchase. They fold and you put some zip ties, but then you have to keep replacing zip ties every time you use them. So they're not really like low cost because they cost little, but long term you're spending a lot on zip ties. Here is a piece of a distilled water jug I had cut, so to make my own layering device by creating a ring, and I took some self-adhesive craft foam, made these little gaskets, and one goes on each end, and they work. I have successfully had some limbs from a loquat tree root employing this method. So this is a good simple method, but using a hydrogen peroxide container or concurrently a rubbing alcohol container, you can actually make a much larger air layering device that you simply slip over the limb. Now you're going to cut off the ends of the container, and you see that segment that's reflecting light, it's nice long flat segment. You want to keep that portion. You see how it's it will form a lip over the longer part of the container, and on the top you see it's also even longer and flat. So what you want to do is, I use a box cutter to simply cut a slit, and then I'll use a pair of scissors to trim the ends off, and then you can go to the next step. But before you do, you want to make sure that the ends are nice and cut right. Essentially, I've made a square tube, and you can see the ends which I have cut off that to make the tube. For the next step, I'm using this nice old English-made paper cutter. They don't make them like this anymore. This one was purchased back in the 80s, so it's a nice classic. But anyway, you don't need to use this. You can really use a pair of scissors, but I'm using the tube to figure out how I need to cut to make sure that I don't have it cut too big or too small. I have some scraps of self-adhesive craft foam which I'm going to use, and I'm cutting them to the right diameter until I have several of them. All in all, I ended up with 7, and I'm going to make one layer of 4 and one layer of 3. All I did was peel and stick. Make sure they're lined up and peel and stick. So after finishing these off and having one layer of 4 and one layer of 3, and it doesn't have to be 4 and 3, I just had 7, so that's what I'm making. You can make it how thick or thin you so desire. But anyway, once you have them stuck and they're just right with the layers of 4 and 3, in my case, you're ready to go. You want to make sure that they are going to fit in the ends, and in my case, they do. To drill the hole in the center of those two square craft foam blocks, I prefer using a Forstner bit. You can get them in so many different sizes, and you want to find one characteristic of the size limb or the thickness of the rim you're going to get. If the limb is a little thicker, that's fine because of the compressibility of the craft foam. So I picked out a 3/8 of an inch drill bit, and I have the drill and I'm putting it on there, and then you can drill the hole. As you can see, compared to the one I drilled with a standard drill bit, you get a much nicer hole with the Forstner bit when drilling through craft foam. Before you can use it, you have to cut a slit in the middle of each one of these two gaskets. So I have picked the branch that I will be using for the air layer. It's that one that's growing straight up. So far, the branches I've had success when air layering were growing straight up versus growing horizontally. I'm not sure if that is typically what happens, but you're going to stick it from the top and slip it through the leaves and down over the stem. In this case, there's like a branch that had been cut, and I can basically have that as a holding place for the tube. Because using the peroxide container is longer than a typical air layering device, I can cut through about 2 or 3 different nodes along that branch, so I can have a lot of surface area for which roots can develop. And then you apply the rooting hormone, and I know some of the viewers will cringe watching me use my fingers to spread it on there, but it works. Once an adequate amount of rooting hormone is applied, you can put the lower gasket and slip the top over it. When you've made sure the gasket is sealing the bottom nicely, and it's not going to be an extremely tight seal unless you design it that way, you can commence with putting the growing media in there. In this case, I used some nice moist peat moss. And you want to fill it all the way up to the top. Once you have it filled to the top, keeping in mind you need some room for the top gasket, you can go ahead and place the top gasket on there, and you get to wait for a few weeks and wait for it to root, and then you should have a new plant that you can plant separately and grow a new tree. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found this inspiring to make your own air layering device that you can just slip over some larger limbs. Thanks for watching, happy planting, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.